It's 7 o'clock on Wednesday, January 10th, and I will call the finance committee meeting order. I'm Sarah Mellish, the chair, and I have with me today Tom Parkins, Mike Pratt, Maury Creighton, Dean Nahadas, and Peter Twining, and Andy Oldman said he was on his way but would be late. Also in the room is Brian Solacey from the select board and Chief McNeil, Fire Chief McNeil. I don't know whether the brakes. Oh, okay, thank you.
He's very small.
Well, that's the way it works. He's under the weather, so he's home. So the first item on the agenda is the fiscal year 25 operations and capital budget for the fire department. So Chief, would you like to, do you have a presentation?
I
for
do
us?
have a presentation. So with your permission, I would like to do the presentation. I've kind of broken it up into 3 segments, and hopefully we can do questions on each segment as we get there. And I think they all kind of, it'll flow and work well. So
Great.
they can. Can't share my screen.
Oh, good.
Hold on.
Need security.
The host must be different. Send me up there.
Okay, but you're not on Zoom.
I am on Zoom.
You're not showing up.
Oh, is this touch
Wait a
screen?
minute.
Yep.
Okay,
Oh, you're good at this.
no, okay, make co-host. You also need to unmute, I guess.
Hey, oh, because I'm a little echo.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, we didn't
We
get
forgot the
box up.
We got the part.
We had nobody to help us, we used to figure it out.
Great.
The first meeting I was on, Zoom bound. Public hearing.
Said Greg's driving the truck.
Does that work? Does work. All right. So just a little bit about the overview of the fire department. We'll talk about current operations, how things are working, talk about some of the advances we made over the last current year. We'll talk about our capital budget, and we'll also talk about our operating budget as well. And get technology to work. So the main priorities for the fire department, regardless of what we do or what operation, is always life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation in that order. So anytime we go to an incident, our first thing is life safety. Second thing is stabilizing the incident so it doesn't get any worse. And then kind of our third priority is property conservation. So I don't know if you've heard the word of all hazards. But if somebody doesn't know who to call, they call the fire department. We get some really bizarre calls, some which you can, fires, EMS, car accidents, things that and then we get things that you couldn't even imagine if you try. But when we show up, we try to remedy it or mitigate it in however we can. And these calls are increasing. Over the last 3 years, calls for emergency services have gone up 28%. And when you look at the numbers, I don't count inspections as part of our incident numbers. So if you look at previous histories, depending on what chief was here, some chiefs counted inspections in their incident numbers. I don't, because to me, inspections can be scheduled when we're not busy, and they're a priority, but not a huge priority for the fire department. So when we look at incident responses, that is actually somebody calling 911 and us responding. So who we are, so obviously myself, and I have to give Patrice accolades, because coming in here in July, she has kept me floating. I would have sunk many times if it wasn't for her. And then we have 4 groups of firefighters. 4 firefighters are assigned to each group, led by a lieutenant. And as of contract negotiations, they sell them right when I was walking in the door, so first couple weeks in July. Minimum manning is 3 per group. So depending on the situation, you could have 4 or 3, depending on paid time off, vacation time, sick time, etc. So about 60% of the time, we have 4 firefighters on duty at all times. And then obviously we do staff up when we've got snow and things like that would hamper additional resources coming into town. We up it to 4 if it's already at 3. So here are your 4 new call firefighters. We've been already onboarding them. And a big thanks to Tom and Brian who assisted us in our interview process. They all 3 of which are returning call firefighters, and then Mark Bruno is our new addition who lives on Forest Lane. They're all firefighter 1 and 2 certified. We have to do they've been, Rick and Dylan were on the call department, I think, up until late 21, early 22 is maybe when it was disbanded. So we got to do some training, which is going on this month on breathing apparatus and stuff, just to kind of review our organization. 2 are certified paramedics and 1 is an EMT. So once we get done with our onboarding training this month, they should be responding to calls as of February 1st is kind of my goal. They're actually already coming back with the floods. Dylan came back. We had to call everybody in today because we were so busy, and he came in and helped pump some basements and things. So they're already paying back. So call firefighter onboarding, kind of just the cost of it. We had budgeted, or I shouldn't say we, previous budgets that I'm working with, I had budgeted $13,500. As of anything, the cost of the structural turnout gear and things have increased. So our cost right now is $20,220. And that's basically setting them up with everything to do the job. There is kind of there's always a supply shortage, but a structural gear that we ordered last week will take about 6 months to get in. So some of the guys are sucking in the gut, rolling up sleeves. We're trying to find stuff that fits. And then we have some rental gear that will come in and kind of hold us over until that new gear shows up. But they should be all outfitted and ready to go. My hope is by July 1st, most of that gear should be in. When I got hired, I ordered gear in July. I just got it December 28th. So it's about a 6-month lag by the time we order. So our call volume, 1,237. Those are emergency responses. That doesn't count for inspections and things like that. And as one caveat to our call volume and our reporting statistics, we've transitioned to a new system, as I alluded to in some of my monthly reports to you. So we're fully on board with the new system. So this presentation next year will have some numbers that means everything's going to be apples to apples. Right now, they were using 3 different systems. Now it's kind of consolidated everything, so all the systems talk to me. So the numbers are what they are. This is consistent with throughout the Commonwealth. Usually municipalities, regardless if they're a city or a small town, it's 2 to 4.5% goes into the fire category, and then everything else kind of fills in the rest of the circle. So the actual structure fire category, anywhere, if you go to, Lynn, you come here, you go based upon the amount of calls they do, it's about 2 to 4.5%, 2 to 5% of the call volume. So all of our breakdowns are consistent with other communities. Just kind of one of the cool things our maps can do is tell us kind of where our hot body is for calls. It also helps us, God forbid we have another pandemic or something like that, we can actually zone in on different parts of town and we can actually see spreads based upon 911 calls, medical calls. If it's respiratory or cardiac things, we could look at different parts of town and kind of come up with different solutions or education, things like that. One of the things we've been starting to monitor with our new system, we've always monitored it, but it does a great job of simultaneous calls. In the month of November and December, we had 35 overlapping calls. So far this month, this is Sunday, we had 3 at one time. This morning at 4 a.m., we had 3 at one time. So there's a lot of overlapping calls. Today, the guys have done, I think they're up to 14 runs today since 5 a.m. So they've been out straight.
What again is an overlapping call?
So if one call is already going on, so our on-duty staff can usually handle one call at a time.
Right.
Once there's a second call, then we call people. Yep. So our overtime versus the 3-year average is something we've been monitoring obviously very closely. December saw a little bit of an uptick, but that's normal with the holidays. We also had 2 firefighters that had new additions to their family, so they were out paternity leave. So everything's going as planned. I expect it to kind of follow the 3-year average line and kind of go back down over the upcoming months. We do have 1 firefighter that's going out for knee surgery, so he'll be out about a month or so, but he's gonna come back light duty and help us with the computer systems and stuff, so we can get some administrative help as well. So ambulance billing. So one of the things that I was looking at this fall, I'm big into the EMS world, and the numbers didn't seem to jive with me when I was looking at them. So a deeper dive is our ambulance revenue numbers hadn't been increased since 2020. Chief Beardsley was the last one to increase the numbers. So the minute we found that out, we increased them to what the average is. Our billing company, Comstar, provides this kind of spreadsheet, if you will. And the middle one is the average of the top 50 providers, what they bill. So most of the agencies just jump on board whatever the average is, and we are well below it. We increased it in, I think, middle of October, and then January 15th, it'll go up to the 2024 rates. They do change the rates annually, so that's something that we'll keep on and adjust it as the Medicare and Medicaid allowables kind of increase. The other thing that we're working on is we've been doing reporting to Medicare and Medicaid. So they'll actually refund us additional monies every year as long as we do whatever they require for reporting. It's a lot of legwork, but I think hopefully once we do the first year, the second year will be a little bit easier and the reporting will be we'll know what we're doing instead of figuring it out as we go right now. So here's our revenue. This is from Comstar over the last few years, and you'll see that 2023 is 228,000. My projections with the revenue increase that we made per runs, and then we're also having a third service do quality assurance and quality improvements on our run reports, which will make more run reports that weren't, maybe they had something omitted, et cetera, that make it eligible for billing. Those will now be eligible for billing. So I'm expecting our revenues in 2024 calendar year to be about $300,000.
You like that?
I thought. So current grant funding, we have 2 grants that are submitted. Usually these are slam dunks. Emergency preparedness grant, which Chief Fitzgerald's the emergency manager for the town. It's one of the ones that we kind of share. This year, he's like, I asked if I could have it. He goes, sure. So I thank him for that. So the vehicle blanket is for emergency vehicles, electric vehicles. When they catch on fire, they'll burn for days. So basically what this is, it's a thick canvas cover that goes over the car and basically smothers it. And you just leave it in that for up to a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on what's going on. And then the special nozzles that pierce the battery compartments of the electric vehicles in order to try to put the batteries out. So that should be funded by grants. Massachusetts Fire Safety Equipment Grant, ballistic equipment. Unfortunately, we see what's going on throughout the world. Right now, we have only 4 vests for our staff, and we have to keep them at the station. So if we're on a call and, God forbid, we had to go to one of these incidents, we have to go back to the station, get them, put them on. So current standard is to have 1 set of gear for each person per vehicle. So that grant will fund that as well. Upcoming grants, Chief Rita from Essex and I have been in discussion. We're going to do a combined grant, so we're eligible for more money to get into the schools and do our SAFE program, Students Against for Fire Safety, as well as a senior program where we go into the elderly housing complexes in order to teach fire safety, cooking safety, look at smoke detectors, things like that. The FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant, which will be upcoming, it should be any day now. We can put in for 3 different things, and just because we do one doesn't mean we're less likely to get the other. So one of our capital requests that we'll kind of go over in a little bit is our self-contained breathing apparatus in our fill station. They have to be replaced. We'll have to do it in FY26. We're in a good spot where there are expiring, they won't meet OSHA standards, that will be high up on the grant list. So I would expect that we get a grant to cover, if pretty much the entire, not on that one. The regional training grant, I reached out again to Essex, and I also have emails out to all the Cape Ann communities to have companies come in and actually do different types of training for the firefighters so that they can do it on duty, which saves us overtime costs. It also makes them more accessible because right now trainings are decreased at the fire academy. So we don't have a lot to get into. It's very competitive to get into, but if we can have a company come in and have a grant to pay for that, that will cover that. And then my big, this will be like winning the Powerball, is the fire truck and the tanker. Is right now, because we technically only have one pumper truck in town for structure fires, that puts us at a good spot. And then we also have an automatic aid agreement that we started in July with Essex. So the minute Essex has smoke in the building, we go automatically. Same thing like this morning at 4 a.m. on Bridge Street, they came over to us automatically. What that does for the grant is they have a lot of areas of town that don't have hydrants, not protected. Those are now considered our areas that aren't protected for grant purposes because we're automatic responders to those areas. That will help us in this, hopefully pushing for this grant. Again, don't get your hopes too high on that one. If we do get that, that'll be great. And then the SAFER grant, which is the staffing. So this is a big one, and you know, we've kind of gone back and forth, and I've watched the previous meetings on that. Looking forward, in the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to have 3 to 4 vacancies. We know one of our lieutenants has to retire; he'll age out in 2 years. Another one is looking at 3 years to retire. And then if you look historically, we're going to lose one firefighter to go to a bigger city, go to a different area, et cetera. And then that fourth would be that deputy spot. So we'll have 4 openings. The reason I bring that up is we always talk about the famous 2 in, 2 out. That's that OSHA requirement. And basically what that means is if you had any type of smoke in your house, if we have to put our breathing mask on, we can't go into that house at all unless we have 4 people, 2 to be outside, 2 to be inside. Unless there's a life safety, if there's a kid in there or whatever, we can do that, we can bypass that. So right now with our staffing, we had talked about each group has 4 people. If one person's on vacation, we drop to 3. We don't backfill that. Putting in for this grant now allows us to basically sell it as we'd have 4 groups of 5. Our minimum would be 4, so we can meet that standard 100% of the time. That moves us to the top of that list for that grant because we're actually going to be meeting that requirement. So just kind of something to think about. And the fully funds the hirees for 3 years once they're hired. Again, it's not like hitting the lottery, it's like hitting a couple of Kenos in a row. If we get it, my kind of plan would be to hire the latest we could. So we get those 3 years as far out as we can for when we hire. So we put in for the grant in January. Let's say we get it, we'd be offered it in July. We'd have to hire by July of 25. So that would bring us out to 28. That would cover those gaps of people leaving like that. If we look again back historically, that's where you see your biggest overtime is when we lose somebody. That significantly cuts into the overtime. So when we can forecast that this is going to happen, it would be my recommendation that we would move forward with this, or at least try. There's no, like I said, there's no guarantees, as every other department is trying to do this as well. We're not by ourselves. It's just kind of something to think about. When we look at the matrix of response, when I look at it, did we put 4 people on duty? Or 4 people on that initial scene? So did we augment the 3 people on duty with a call firefighter? Was I in the building during the day? Did we get 4 people there so we can initiate that attack? That's basically how I'm measuring the department. How we get to those 4, we're going to try different avenues to do that as fiscally responsible as we can. But that's what our overall arching goal is to do. Reason for that, so the picture on the left is a ceiling fan fire, very common bathroom ceiling fan fire, etc. If you have that in your house, and we have 4 guys on duty, your house is smoke filled, we can go in, put that out. Not a big deal. Very little damage. Maybe you get a new bathroom out of the deal. But if we have three people on and it's the middle of the night, everyone's out of the house, then the picture on the right is what happens with that ceiling fan fire, because that fire doubles and increases. So that's kind of the whole, the goal behind it. I like to put pictures so you can kind of, understand what it means. Obviously, we do the best we can with what we have. I think we have some awesome people that work at the fire department and they do an amazing job. So whatever they're given, they will do the best they can within the parameters that are set. So questions on the first part? Yeah.
So the staffing through the Safer grant,
Yep.
are those, because it sounds like you're describing a scenario where, hey, we go for, if we're successful, we add 3 people, they cover spend the time.
Yeah.
In that period, we're expecting at least 3 people are going to leave.
Yeah.
Through resignation or retirement or whatever.
Yeah.
Does the Safer grant require that those are added staff and therefore you have to replace the 3?
No, it's just if we hire A, B, C, D, so we have to maintain those for 3 years and there's no hold on. So let's say, they raise the retirement age to 80 and no one leaves.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we have to keep them. There's no, you're not obligated past that 3 years.
That's a huge point, because, right, the way we understood it, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure the way we understood it from prior chiefs was the way that Safer grant would work would be for incremental positions, not for replacement positions, so.
So you can use it either or. We would be selling it as, we're not gonna say these are the possibilities in the future of things that happen. We're gonna add these 4 too, and we'd be running for a period of time, 2 years or so with those 4 groups of 5 until that attrition happens. So the grant would be verbalized as we're adding that staffing, so we have 4 groups of 5 with a 4-man minimum. That makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. I articulate that clear enough.
So it is for incremental, but what you're saying is you'd still do it for incremental if you knew that, say, I don't know, 2 people were gonna retire in 6 months because on a net basis.
Exactly.
Yeah, got
Yep.
it.
So on the 2 in, 2 out model.
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable if the confined space monitor guy were a trained patrolman as opposed to a fire?
So they have to be full-time fire academy trained 1 and 2.
Even if they have the training for a monitor.
Yeah.
Confined space.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
So it's a little different than a hazmat confined space where, like if National Grid's, in the hole on Summer Street, like they were during the raid, they have somebody that's basically they're monitoring the situation, and they can gaff them and pull them out.
Right.
Unfortunately, with the fires, we're so far in the building.
Special.
Exactly. Yep.
That anchor grant.
Yep.
Is that something supplemental to the existing engine?
So we've always had 2 engines. So historically, we've had 2 engines, a ladder, ambulance or 2. And through. It's appropriate. Yeah, through some different thought processes. Some things have been sold and so we've kind of dropped down to where we shouldn't be at the current moment. You'll see in my apparatus plan shortly that the plan is to bring another engine online in FY 28, I think it is. This is something we could put in for every year until then, in hopes that we're successful.
What is your intent with respect to call firefighters? You bringing 4 on? Do you plan to bring more on, or what do you?
So that's my plan. These 4 were very easy to onboard because they're already trained. So that was the quickest thing to kind of get done. You'll see in the budget, you'll see another 20,000 for call firefighter equipment. My goal is to get another 4 on board. There is some worry there. So there's 2 worries. One is we expend all this money and our return on investment based upon their turnout to calls is so low that we lose money. On the flip side, and I hope this is the problem, is I come back to you, I say, you know what, they've been coming back all the time and they get paid when they come back and we've gone through their salaries. So there's that happy medium. If we put 12 on and all 12 are rock stars and they come back all the time, that can have a significant budget impact as well. So I have 2 worries. I'm hoping that it's somewhere in the middle. It's a happy medium, so I don't know which way it's gonna go. And the other worry is if it, I don't want there to be a false sense of security. We have 4 call firefighters, we're safe now. Yet to be determined.
Just a question on the call stuff is great. I know you're collaborating with Essex and this may be a little touchy, but are there collaboration opportunities for staffing between the two towns? And I mean, I know our departments are kind of different.
Yeah.
But if you think out 5 years, what do you think might or could happen there?
So I think there's a lot of different views coming in, especially with the school system and kind of the situation we're in right now. If you take that away from it, I think it's totally something that could happen. Our call out volume's about double, maybe a little bit more than what Essex is. They currently don't have any full-time staff. They do put 2 call firefighters on 7 days a week if they're available during the day. And then they have 2 on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and any holidays, they'll put them on the overnight as well. So they're transitioning to that model. So I think it's certainly something we could look at and kind of plan for in the future. And I've been working with Essex. You guys have probably seen it already. We have an automatic aid agreement. We're trained together. I think that everyone's on that same mindset. It's just, how do we get there? One of the things that, hopefully with our ambulance, as we get our staffing up, if we're successful with that SAFER grant during that period of time, we could do all of the ALS level care, increase those returns on that care. Because just like us, Essex has great return rates because most of the people in Essex have insurance and private insurance or supplemental insurance. So their percent of collectibles is very high. So if during that time when we're upstaffed, we provide their ALS care, that would be one thing I would come back and say, hey, listen, during this period of time that we've been upstaffed, we're able to increase revenue by X%. And we can kind of do that. They can help us on the fire side. We help them on the medical side. So I think a collaboration is definitely something we could work towards. Good to go to capital? All right. All right, so X series monitor and AED. So the cardiac monitor, the picture on the bottom is the ones the paramedics use. They look at what part of your heart's infarcted. They do a bunch of different things. The technology has drastically increased over the versions that we have now. And then right now we have 2 different types of, we have an AED from one manufacturer and the paramedic monitor from another manufacturer. The consumables don't match, so we're buying pads and things for 2 different monitors. It doesn't make much sense. So what this does is it puts everything on the highest technology. The Zoll offers, they'll give us all the equipment up front, and we pay $54,000 a year for 3 years, 0% interest, kind of going forward.
And then do you own it or are they on?
We own it. Yeah, we own it. And then the AEDs that we currently do, we're already working with Parks and Recs. You might have seen the one down at Masconomo Park. We're putting public access AED cabinets that are heated. The goal is every park, Singing Beach, etc. So if you call 911, the dispatcher will tell you your closest AED's here. You grab it and they can walk you through how to use it. So that was started before I got here, and these additional AEDs would give us more spots to actually put these AEDs out in the community.
What's the plan for the existing equipment?
So the AEDs would be, and then our current paramedic monitors would be traded in as part of
Does
this.
this cost reflect some trading?
Some trade in, the AEDs we would keep because we can utilize those in the community.
The real objective in this is to get compatible consumables for all of them.
Yeah, and to increase the technology, because the technology between the 2 monitors are night and day. So the one here is we can, right now we have to do like 4 different connections to try to send a EKG to the hospital. This one, you hit one button, it shows up, and we can talk to the cardiologist and say, hey, we want to go to this hospital instead, and actually change destination. So if you know people that have gone and that had to be transferred from one hospital to another hospital, with the lack of ambulances and stuff, that doesn't help them long term. So we can actually be in consultation with the doctors, and they see what we see in my time.
But
That's
does
just
Essex use in this area?
So they don't have paramedics, so they don't use, so everyone else in this area is using what's on the screen. The only place that's still using the old technology anywhere close to here is Topsfield. Everybody else is already switched.
And Essex doesn't have any of this capacity.
Paramedic, they have the top one, yeah, but not the All right, transporting ambulance. First, I can't understand how an ambulance costs so much money, so I'm with you, and then that it takes 2 years to build, because you can't just go to the dealership and pick one up. So if we ordered one July 1, we won't have it until 26 in. Sometimes they're 18 months, but the dealer, and I think it was uploaded on ClearGov, I think they told us 20 to 24 months build time. So most places use a front line of 5 years and a reserve of 5 years. That's what Essex does. That's what Middleton does. I will give our guys credit. They take very, very good care of our equipment. They get every inch of life out of everything we have. So I'm comfortable saying that we can get 7 years front line, 7 years back line. So our current ambulance is 5 years old. By the time we order this one, it'll be 7 years old. And my plan would be at that point in time, the ambulance that you see pictured here would now be our reserve. And then the SUV that will then be 7 or 8 years old, that one can be disposed of or repurposed to the DPW or something like that. So it meets our apparatus plan. And the other thing too is right now, the car helps with that, and that should be going online in February as well. We have no consistency. We have a flat tire, we have an oil change, we don't have anything to go into. And God forbid it gets, we're up on the highway for accidents all the time, if that gets hit. It's like I said, we can't just go to the dealership and get one. We'd have to wait, so.
Is the build time just based on availability of components?
Yeah, so it's components and then, they say it's all since COVID, but there's a big push for the ambulances, and a lot of manufacturers have bought each other out, so there's 2, decent manufacturers, Fort and Lifeline. And then you have a couple that, like Boston EMS, they use their trucks for like a year or so, and they get rid of them because they beat on them so bad and they just fall apart. So, they have ones that you can get a little quicker, but they're not gonna have the longevity that we get on the trucks we have here, and they cost almost the same.
Or what their primary reserve?
Yeah, are they? Station renovations, this is a consistent thing, 30,000 a year. I think the money this year, and I have to talk to Greg, is being utilized for, they're pulling it for a generator, because the generator at the fire station we have clamps trying to get started and things during the storms. Our hope is we already have some rough plans to build one more additional office at the fire station. So basically use this money for planning 1 year, the build out the next year, to kind of separate it over. With that additional office it'll give us a officer's office / sleeping quarters. That also gives us the ability, if we ever bring on a female firefighter, we can separate the sleeping quarters and kind of be ahead of it, and not kind of.
Where will it be added? Where in the building will it be added?
So the hose tower in the back right-hand corner, because we don't have to hang hose anymore with the new hose. It's not like the old stuff where we used to have to hang it and dry it. We can repack it wet. So that area there is kind of unused space.
With the female in the hose tower.
So that's what I'm hoping to use that for. However, depending on what happens with the station and things that happen, that's kind of our emergency fund too. And today, I don't know if you saw the picture on social media, the water crested in the garage over the step and just started to leak a little bit into the boiler room. So hopefully, and I heard this evening that Saturday is supposed to be worse. So we're gonna be doing some mitigation measures in the meantime. SCBA and fill station, I had mentioned this when I talked about the federal grants. Currently, our packs have 2 years left of useful life that they'll actually be serviceable, and we can use them by OSHA standards. So next year, if we are unsuccessful with the grant, this will be the highest priority of our capital planning. I just want it on here so you guys are aware of it. Know that I'm going to be going for the grant for it. But if we're unsuccessful, I will be sitting here in a year. I think this is our biggest priority.
So how do the number, it's actually $250,000 and actually 70,000.
So 250 is for the packs and the bottles, 70,000 is for the fill station that actually fills them up.
But the OSHA, OSHA's mentioned a lot, not just in your world,
Yeah.
but lots of other areas. In Are the OSHA requirements, are they in fact requirements, are they guidelines?
No, they're requirements. So there used to be guidelines in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts, to get what year, I want to say it was 16 or 17, they were enacted, so that's when we had to go through and like pick section cords up off the floor and kind of go through that, because they can do different stuff, and that's where the stuff kind of came. Apparatus replacement fund, we had talked about this, I think, last time I met with you guys, about putting 250,000 a year in. And we'll kind of look at the apparatus replacement plan going forward. I think, Greg and Andrea's plan was to forego this year with the funding of the ambulance. And if you look at the spreadsheet, that will work in, and can work, as well. So here's the apparatus replacement plan. So anything in the black category doesn't exist. That was that second engine I was talking about, trying to get through the grant. If we don't get it by FY 28, that would be our request year. And then if we order the ambulance, we should have it by the beginning of FY 27. So down the bottom is basically what the capital expenditures are, and as we scroll out, you'll see we start to have some surplus. So if you don't fund the 250 in addition to the ambulance this year, it's not a make or break situation. It will be made up kind of as that progresses outward.
So that was my question is, what would you have to pay the 450 to order the ambulance, or would you put a down payment
So that's
in the balance?
so
of
you
the
don't
year?
have to pay it, you pay it on delivery.
Yeah,
However, Andrea doesn't like to order something that she doesn't have the money for.
right. No, I
So
understand.
yes, you don't have to write the check, but you write the check on delivery.
You need the appropriation.
Do you have,
You know.
is there space in
Yeah.
the firehouse for?
It's just like a bond.
That's what we've always historically had. The only
Two
addition,
engines, the two ambulances and the squad?
yeah, that's what it is. Even when I was here 20 years ago, that's what we had.
Wow.
And then things happen.
And the cars fit too?
Yeah, well, so one car, my car I take home.
Speak of you.
I didn't get that was it.
The car is parked in the basement, so we might need to get some pontoons depending on the next couple of days, but, yeah. Any questions on the capital?
I don't see the station renovations.
On Clear Gov?
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, I can jump in on that one if you like.
What, Greg?
Yeah, so on the fire station funds, we delayed those funds and put a bigger amount in the third year. So you don't see anything in 25 and 26, and then you see 100,000 in 28. So it's delaying that planning money and then putting it all into 1 year.
So you can't do anything to your station this year.
The capital improvements.
Greg, how does the need for the waterproof doors at the police station and the fire station play into all of this?
I didn't quite hear that, Sarah, I'm sorry.
How does the need for the waterproof doors, the fire station and the police station, the entrance to town hall play into all of this capital budget? What's the plan for that?
So we had hoped to move forward with that, but the problem is that the structure, the structural integrity of the buildings doesn't allow for doing that. So it doesn't meet code. So in order to waterproof a door, you have to have a stronger walls to withstand the pressure of that water up against the wall. So it's what was hoped for to be a logical fix has turned out problematic and not doable from a code perspective.
Okay.
Someone has to do it in the building. But
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The replacement fund, this is well organized. I'm curious, do we have the cost amounts for each of these vehicles and their lifetime? Because I think the ambulance is super helpful. I mean, we're putting about 65,000 a year in for 2 ambulances, but
Mhm.
based on the current plan, you know, ladder tanker squads, it would be helpful for us. And I know we're kind of looking at a bunch of stuff going out 5, 8, 10 years.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that information is here, if that's.
So it's not, I can certainly get it for you. So the one problem with that is these things are changing.
Right.
So I can give you my best guess.
Yeah.
Of what it could cost. You know, right now, our ladder truck, as you know, is 1.4 million this year.
Right.
The last engine we bought was 600,000. The next one we'll be looking at is probably 850 to 9.
Yeah.
Is with the ballpark, but I can give you my best guess historically, how much it's increased over the last 5 years and then forecast it out.
I mean, those lines right there, just another column, which is kind of current life, and another column, which is what's the cost.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all know about inflation and then multipliers.
Yeah.
But it helps give us okay, what might be coming down the road in 3 years? And if we don't do that, is it gonna hit us harder in year 4? How do we balance all this?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send that out to you guys this week.
Just to build that, what's the high level, like, just, the ambulance, you said 7 years as a primary, 7 as a backup.
Yep.
Engines.
Engines usually 10 years primary, 10 years backup. So we get 20 years out of that, and the ladder truck will get 20 to 25 years out of as well.
Okay, great.
I think we got 23 out of the ladder truck after, since it won't pass emissions. I think that was 23 years. Good for operation?
The modification you'll make to that schedule in accordance with Maureen's request.
Yes, I'll send that over to you this end of this week. Yep.
Any more questions on that?
I had a random question.
Yeah.
I know that for a while we were, right, for borrowing the Linfield.
We still are.
We still are, okay. So my question is that just like a very informal one-off, or is there kind of this like pseudo network among chiefs of departments where, you know, you're down this, I got this, like,
So there's a little bit of that. We're fortunate that Linfield's building a new fire station, so they don't have a place to house this. Otherwise, they would want it back. So he sent an email out, does anybody have a place to house this? And I said, I will, but can they use it? Is how that went down.
got it.
So there used to be, you know, looking back years ago, Essex County Fire Chiefs, they had a spare ladder truck and a spare engine, and every town put a little money in towards a maintenance budget every year to have kind of a reserve piece that you could grab from. However, the needs quickly outgrew it, so there was kind of wrestling matches on who was gonna get it, and then it kind of fell through the cracks from there, but it hadn't been looked at. But right now, it's hey, can I borrow this for a little bit? And then, you know, we have to have Andrea put on the insurance for the time that we have it and things like that.
Okay, so it's more we got lucky as the one-off, like we said.
Yeah.
It's their firehouse done.
2 year and a half.
Yes, where are they in that year and a half?
They just broke ground, so. Not that I want them to have delays, but. All right, operational, so it's full-time salary is 1.6, that gives us 17 FTEs, so 16 line firefighters and myself. Administrative assistant of 10 hours, call firefighter pay of about 18,000 is in there as well. And then the overtime of 100,000, and that goes in line with what historically it's been. The call firefighter pay is just, that's my best guess on looking at it. It's being optimistic and looking at historically what the training was and what their callback was. The one thing that's missing out of there is right now we have 4 lieutenants. Historically, we've always had 1 captain and 3 lieutenants. Captain Bigger retired in 22-ish, maybe late 22. So no one's ever upgraded to that. We haven't run the assessment center for a captain and things like that. So that's something, at least in the short term, I'd like to add, because that person usually takes over some of the fire prevention activities by the way it's negotiated in the contract, which is ever increasing with the building and construction and things like that going on in town and forecasting going on in town. So that's one thing that's not,
So that's not included in the budget.
that's not included in that now.
Next question on the
Yep.
overtime.
Yep.
Just in the current fiscal year, you know, where we are, like,
So, right, I do. It is nuts. I want to say it's about 60,000 right now.
Yeah, this report you just sent
That's what I'm trying to look at. I'm just going,
seems to be, we've spent 67,200
67 is what we spent so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with a $30,000 budget. We only gave a 30,000 budget for this year because we were upset.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
excess use.
I don't know, it's like,
I
think the term "we" is.
I know it's like throwing a dark in the dark, but what would the guess be for the rest of the current fiscal year?
So as you look at those trends from that 3-year versus this year, my guess is going to continue to go down. So I think we'll probably end up right around 100. That'll be, and that was with onboarding. We still have a firefighter at the academy right now, 2 people on paternity leave and somebody with a knee injury. We should be, might be a little bit over 100, but right in that ballpark, we should be
100 for the year?
for the year.
Yes.
So how are we gonna get that money?
Yes.
Especially.
Do you have savings and salaries?
So we have a small savings salaries and there's some of the EMS training money depending on what we do for training for the remainder part of the year. We can snag a little bit of that, but there will be a deficit in the overtime.
With weekly savings and salaries. Budget versus actual.
Yeah, so we had starting July 1, we didn't hire somebody till September 15th, so there's a couple month window in there, so there's a little bit of a I don't want to say a buffer because it doesn't buff anything, but
It's an offset.
yes,
And that's in your thinking at the 100 number?
yes.
I guess question for you, Greg, do you have a way to think about this? Within the silo of public safety? And I'm kind of thinking as we roll up into June and are trying to figure out how to do this without tapping into reserves. Is there a way that you see to do this?
My guess is that it'll be a combination of FinCom reserve and some unspent dollars in a few other accounts.
Your point, we can use all safety, right? So for savings.
Yes.
Sarah, do we have that as loud as possible? Is that the volume follow up on the, I mean,
Post office.
It is now.
it's up part of it. I just find it a little hard here.
Different.
Good on the salaries and, well, so the,
How do you arrive at the 100 for the FY25 year? You're saying that's gonna be 100 this year.
so I'm just going historically where we've been. They've been much more than 100. If you're,
Yes, but in thinking about the 100 for the year ahead.
yeah,
You're modeling it on basically on the same kinds of things you're experiencing in 24.
Yeah.
Maternity leaves and blah, blah, blah.
yes. And then paid time off, things and contractual time off and things like that.
OT just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I guess just our thought process, was as we
More people.
hire more full-time, the
Yeah.
OT should You know,
Exactly.
And I think I think it will. You know, if I was guessing, it'd probably run around 85 to 90. The 100 is, I'm never gonna have to come back and beg. That's the.
We're
safe-
recording.
I have previous recordings too.
We were well over 200,000 something.
But while COVID years,
So this year, we have the 30 plus the 95 that we already transferred from for FY 24.
No, we haven't put any in from our.
So that 95,000
That was last year.
was for the previous year.
You have to look at it from a relative standpoint,
Exactly.
and from a relative standpoint,
100K looks good.
it's a lot of.
The relative I was thinking of lower than this relative.
Right, but I think what the chief's saying, you go back, it's been 200, it's been 300, and now it's come down to 100, which I agree, 100 still seems like too much or a lot, given, you know, but it's less than 200, it's less than 300.
well, the other thing to kind of keep in mind too is the overtime, and I've been trying to break it down for you, it's not just shift coverage overtime. There are some mandated trainings that people have to do, like if we have a quarterly officer meeting, I would have all the officers in one room. That costs money, so it's not all just shift coverage. There are some other things that play into that, which I've been, you know, kind of laying out, where those break down. So the vast majority, yes, is shift coverage, but there are some other things that kind of play into that.
And you do as much training during normal hours as you can,
Yeah,
right?
so that's fairly new, where we used to do, was gonna start doing one monthly training a night, one night monthly training. To bring the call department in with the full-time staff, so we can all train together. So that's gonna be coming back, so that kind of plays into that as well a little bit, so.
And Chief, when I look at the salary line itself, is that, I don't know where you are in collective bargaining, and maybe Greg.
They just settled in July, right when I was coming in, they were settled. So I
Okay,
think
so
they
this
signed
reflects,
So what's the increase for the fiscal year 25?
3%.
That right, Greg, 3%?
3% for 25, yes.
Is it a 3-year contract?
Yes,
and the 3%'s in this number.
Yes.
Yes.
Other expenses?
So some of these I got in conjunction with working with Nate and Chuck. They look at the utility bills and stuff townwide. So natural gas, an increase of $100, utility expense, an increase of $150. Electricity and heating oil are staying the same. Building repairs, I've increased by $500. I'm trying to do a lot of preventative stuff. Things like our overhead garage doors haven't been PM'd in years. When those break, those are a big ticket item. So paying somebody to come in and do some preventative maintenance on those, I'm trying to spend a little upfront to not spend a lot on the end. Vehicle maintenance, 30,000, that's unchanged. The EMS program, so that's our consumables to run the paramedic program, is 30,000. Radios, 4,000, which they can pay for a single radio. Training is increased by 1,000. That's to kind of help offset some of the call firefighter training and bringing in some trainers for that. Our telephone expense, this should be going down in FY 26 because going to the rec, we're finally getting our modems and stuff put in the truck by regional dispatch. So right now we're paying for a cell service for each of the trucks. That should, FY 26 should be coming down because they're picking up the cost of that as we transition over. Office supplies, equipment increased by $2,250. Custodial supplies increased by 200, and that's just showing what the inflation was over last year to this current year. Gas and diesel I increased by 500. However, once I increase it, now the gas prices are going down, so who knows what's going to happen. The call firefighter supplies, that has basically, if we want to onboard an additional 4 based upon what we paid for this 4. Travel and meals is a new category. When I go to conferences or trainings, things like that, and we didn't have a good place of putting it. So we tried to fit it somewhere, so it wasn't really that transparent, so creating a category for that. And then dues and subscriptions. This is a big increase because of our, we've gone from 7 systems to 1 system for reporting, so everything talks to one another. This is again, something that the regional dispatch, we're gonna put out to procurement. They should be picking up a large portion of this, hopefully by FY 26, maybe sooner. But it's state of Massachusetts and their procurement process, so, I'm not sure how that's gonna go. That's in there just in case that they don't, procure it. I don't think they're gonna have it. Just looking at how this year has gone so far, they're not gonna have it, streamlined for, this kind of fiscal year. And that's it. I'll entertain questions, comments, remarks. Questions, comments on that?
This didn't include the scuba stuff. Cause that was for a grant.
So it was listed under capital, but it's listed as not to move forward in your budgeting process,
Right.
just so you know it's there if we're unsuccessful in the grants.
Yes, Mr. Solomon.
I just want to speak to the call firefighters. On my side, there were 7 applicants, 6 very qualified candidates.
Mhm.
Okay, so, and I assume that they couldn't make the firefighter
The
academy.
fire academy, they couldn't make it work.
Okay, I was, yeah, then you would have had some just.
Yes,
And I don't know, if this reflects in the budget, is that we had money in there for training, for firefighter academy, right?
not for,
Well, when we first sat last year, there was no line item of onboarding or sending them for.
yeah, that was a third,
The volunteer.
so the 13.5 was for, there.
Right, but is that including the going to qual?
Yes,
The state, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the state picks up the actual training costs, right? What,
for the academy, so it's just the hourly wage you pay them to go. So the actual academy, like a full-time academy, it's actually the insurance companies that pay for it. They pay the academy because they hope to get a return on their investment, some sort.
I thought that the chief did an excellent job.
I agree.
And-
Well, and it was great having, it's good having everybody on the same page too. I think people walking in, it's like, why is there a select board member and a finance committee sitting and call firefighter interviews? But it makes sense because you see different, I saw a couple things different in questions they asked that I wouldn't even have thought of it. So I thought it worked out really well. Appreciate it.
Greg, do you have any thoughts, comments?
Thoughts on what now?
On the fire department budget?
Yeah, on the budget, no, I'm pretty comfortable where it is.
Okay.
The issue of the captain, that's in the scheme of things, not a big adjustment.
Maybe this is a hard question, but I look at this for a community of 5,300 people. Is this fairly consistent with budgets you've seen for fire departments in comparable communities of our population that are primarily residentially focused?
So we offer a premium service. And we spend more than most communities of our size, but we're getting a service that most communities are not getting. That is that ALS ambulance is front and center.
the part I heard was that Essex literally doesn't have any paramedics.
They have no, so they basically call Bullport, private ambulance service, who will then take some of that revenue, obviously for them, or if they're not available, they call us.
And we're the opposite, right? All of our,
Yeah, so if anything, we now have paramedics that if we get a BLS truck, we can actually send one of our paramedics with a BLS truck to the hospital if we need to, so, yeah. So to kind of answer your question, if you go down towards the towns around the Cape that are similar to us, our budgets are right in the $2 million range is consistent with either the amount of population, call volume, services provided. It's within that
And
same.
why is that the case? Educate me a little bit. Why?
So harder to get people. kind of the same thing as the call department, you know, every place has kind of dwindled. And I think there it happened first. So they had to go to full time. One of the things that dictates them a little bit more, they have a little bit further of a transport time. So right now our ambulance is tied up usually about 45 minutes on a call. By the time we can clear the hospital, sometimes up to an hour, they can be tied up for 2 hours depending on where they're transporting. So that hurts them as well. The other thing to look at too is the hospital wait times now are something that's starting to affect us, where we used to just walk into Beverly Hospital, drop the person off, talk to the nurse and leave. Now we might have to hold the wall for 20 minutes until they find a bed for us. So the hospitals are getting busier, so our turnaround time is now being affected by that as well. So that has trickle down effects as the ambulance is tied up, you know, staff.
Do we get that recognized in the reimbursement?
Not at all.
The run is still the run.
The run is the run, yeah.
But the good news there is, like you said earlier, sounds like we're very much now on top of the building and,
Yes,
you know.
Yeah.
That sounds like it.
yeah, I mean, we're looking at the way the run report, like if, you know, somebody has, you know, if they miss a checkbox in a run report, before it would go and just wouldn't be billable. Now we're catching that, creating it, sending it back out to be reevaluated for billing.
Can we talk a little bit about the moving lieutenant to captain? What's the benefits?
Talked about that at all?
What?
That promotion or what?
So I hadn't brought it, so I was hoping for a deputy spot that would fill that fire prevention, which is, it takes a lot of my time up as the fire prevention. This is a Band-Aid for that solution. It allows one person to kind of be the point person for the fire prevention.
So what's the difference between the captain and the deputy?
So basically, the deputy would be a day shift, it would be an extra FTE, it'd be a day shift position. That way there's, you know,
Whereas the
continuity.
captain is one of
It
the.
would be on shift, so it still hurts.
Person. Promotion from existing person.
Yes, yeah, so it's not a new FTE, it's just a stipend position because they're taking on more responsibilities.
So just total dollars, I think it was around 11,000.
Yeah. what-
No, but to compare it to, what would the total dollars be? We're talking about hiring. With
120 with benefits and everything.
everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not an active.
Well, they're certified, they count towards that too, they're an active fire, yeah, and then, you know, like right now, if I go away, thankfully Lieutenant Tuzet is, wears a bunch of hats, he can take over and, you know, respond when I'm, you know, away, but.
Only during the day. You're saying the deputy gets on the day.
So Jesse would be probably, if I was to envision it, it would be 4 10-hour days. What that allows us to do is backfill that, if that day position for some reason went unfilled, instead of hiring somebody on overtime, they slide into that spot to save us on that overtime. That's how that would be utilized.
Looking for a motion on the lieutenant to captain thing? or-
Yeah, I think the question is that 11,000 is not included in the budget presented to us. Do we want it added to the budget?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So I have a question here, I mean, just looking back at actuals from 22 to 23. The total budget was about a 4% increase. And if you look at expenses over that 2-year period, it's about 3.7%. And I'm just looking at the 161 to 167 and the 1.6 million to 1.67 million. And now we're looking at almost 9% on the overall budget. I mean, these increases are pretty significant.
But one of them was a one-year deal.
Right.
With the dues and subscriptions.
Yeah, but I mean,
That increased almost 14,000.
on page 119, I'm just looking at the bottom of the.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the line items to see what changed.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the
That's
total,
really the only big change.
Yeah, I mean, the expenses are. They're up there. I mean, I know
Firefighter supplies.
salaries are where they are, but. there's a lot.
Firefighter supplies went up, and that's call firefighters, right?
Mhm.
But the two biggest
Right.
And
movers,
equipment,
two biggest movers for that 9% is probably the overtime goes from 30 to 100, right?
Yep.
And then the line above it, right?
Right. I guess what I'm just saying is if we're looking at 9% this year and 9% next year and the next year and the next year, we're climbing. We ought to know where we're
Not
going.
sustainable.
Yeah.
but I think you said 26,000 should be coming out next year.
Yeah, so like the cell phone, for instance, I think that was at,
6,200.
yeah, so
Right.
that should go down significantly once the regional dispatch picks that up.
The dues and subscriptions.
So they're gonna, it's not gonna, that won't go back to where it was. It'll probably go back 50%, because they'll pick up the, anything that has to deal with their operation. Not like the fire prevention stuff that they're not involved in, they won't pick up the tab for that or the scheduling. But emergency response reporting, that will be included in that going forward, so.
So in dollars, that 9% is about 150 grand. Okay? And half of that, 70 grand, is the OT. So if that OT is now gonna stay at 100, right? Then at least that flat.
We've been here before. I think we've been here before. I think it's gonna stay at 100 in the future.
Right?
Good man.
I mean, we've,
At least we got somebody looking at it.
Yeah, we've got a lot more attention on it than the past.
I'd say here, I'd say for two reasons. Number one, we've hired how many full-time firefighters?
Three.
Right.
No, 4 in the past 3 years.
4 in the past 2 years. As a percentage.
Yeah.
it's a big
That's a lot.
percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's number one. And then number two, the call firefighter, right? That should help over time.
Doesn't really help overtime because they're not filling the shifts. It helps on some of the callbacks. It gets that matrix I'm looking at is get 4 people to that billing part. That's what it helps with. It really doesn't help with overtime. If the way that contractually, if a spot's being filled by a full-time and they're not available, the call firefighter then can take it, then you'll see savings there. We have to offer it contractually first to the full-time.
So you have to offer overtime to a full-time.
Correct.
Before you can have a call fire.
Fill a shift, yeah.
Okay.
But with such a small department, I don't think what's happening.
Oh, yeah, sure. And I mean, just previously, I mean, granted the staffing, they were really hurting the staffing, so people were getting ordered all the time. We've had 1-4 since I've been here, so. The amount of overtime has obviously gone down. They were working every other day for 24 hours, so they were.
What did we,
Oh, I just had a question about mechanics. So if you're on a call, like let's say you're on 128 and somebody's shift ends.
Yep.
Do they automatically roll into an OT situation for some block of time or what?
So for the first
Their
15
thoughts.
minutes is paid. Once they hit 15 minutes, they get 2 hours.
Okay,
So then it goes in 2 hours and then whatever the time is from that point forward.
so if they're sitting at Beverly Hospital, waiting for somebody to get a bed.
At shift change.
Yeah. okay.
Yes, yeah.
So it's 2 hours, is basically the transition.
Yeah.
Okay.
so my thought was on that succession planning and stuff. If a lieutenant wants to take the training to be a captain.
Yeah.
Would that training also, would he be qualified to be a deputy? I mean,
So you get there, so there's 4 different levels of officer training. So you have lieutenant 1, captain 2, deputy 3, and then chief is 4.
right,
So basically, depending on what we set, kind of what I've instilled so far since I've been here is wherever you're at, you should be trying to get to that next level. So if you're a lieutenant, you're level 1 already. While you're a lieutenant, you should be putting yourself in a position, if you want to move up the ranks,
right.
to get that level 2.
So, well, I guess what I'm getting at is rather than hire a deputy next year out of the blue.
Yeah.
Would one of our lieutenants consider that job and then we look to hire a new lieutenant.
I hope that's how it works, because that's instills confidence in the department, passion to move forward. There's a lot of ripple effects with that, and that's what I hope happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be, if that happens, that's an accolade, I'll take it, so.
Any other comments?
So,
questions
are
on
we
the
gonna
budget?
do something about the 11,000 budget? Is it matter of simply than having the budget adjusted and then we have to vote on the budget?
Or we can vote for a higher budget. In other words, we could add 11,000 to the salary line.
This has never happened.
It was a really uncharted. You understand this.
Is that what we would do, Greg? Add 11,000 to the salary
Yes.
line and
You-
then vote on it?
Correct, that is correct.
we would have capability of training someone to be a captain if they so desire.
Yeah, a lot of the lieutenants have already, they have well more than they need. So we do some type of, typically it's a written exam and then some type of, we have a company come in and do an assessment center through different situations, whether it's fire prevention situations, managerial, staff, human resource issues, things like that.
So you're saying that a lot of lieutenants already have essentially the qualifications?
Yeah, yeah. So the staff, I can't say enough about the staff. They're proactive, they're passionate, and they're always looking to better themselves, and much of which is on their own time, so. We're very fortunate in that aspect.
Okay, so
If we don't do that, let me just look, be sure I understand. So we don't add 11,000. We just, we don't have the fill-in capacity. We don't have that.
well, we don't have the additional support of doing some of the tasks that the
Right.
chief is having
Right,
to do,
exactly.
that used to always be done by a captain. Till very recently, we had a captain.
We retired or so.
Be nice to have that flexibility.
Right. And this, I think he said fire prevention, right?
Yeah, that would be you guys gave me millions of dollars. That captain, well, that's too funny. So if that day deputy comes to fruition years from, a few years from now, that captain will be transitioned to oversee the equipment, other things that, we could get benefit from as well. So as it sits right now, the main goal would be what it's been historically is fire prevention.
I'm supportive of the 11,000. My only question is, like historically, wouldn't we just have the budget revised and then?
Well, I would rather just vote on it and not have to keep going back for revisions. I mean, she's gonna
Okay.
revise it anyway.
Got the number there?
Yeah. So
So we'd like a motion, so we add $11,000 to the staff salary line.
I'd like a motion to approve total salaries and benefits
Ah.
of $1,667,475, which includes the $11,000 additional stipend for a captain. Peter seconds it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, unanimous. Okay. Total expense, yeah.
That should be, make motion for $1,875,925. Fire,
Total fire,
total fire.
That's the 1,864.
right, he's adding the 11,000. This bottom line is a total of everything.
I'll second.
Andy seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Unanimous, thank you. I wonder, is that anybody's car out there?
Well, it's encouraging that we found on phone up in the police department circuit. Nobody listens to that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not problem.
I didn't drive, so it's not
Yeah,
my
I didn't drive
fault.
either. It's no excuse.
Okay, so now we have the fire capital budget. Which are two items. The 400 for fiscal year 25 on page 195. Under public safety. The ambulance for 470,000 and cardiac monitors and defibrillator replacement for 54,000. Is there any discussion on those two items? You're good?
What are we doing? Came on slide.
470.
Yeah.
So that's a new ambulance, and then the cardiac monitors and defibrillator replacement is 54,000.
Understanding it's essentially a commitment for 3 years at 54,000.
Correct, you're right.
Just
Yeah.
It's the first year of the 3-year commitment, which is what we did on the police tasers, and is now getting to the
I want
third
to
year.
be sure I
Yeah.
understand what I'm going.
Yes,
Yeah, we had discussed the new ambulance last year, but it got deferred because of a lot of.
right.
Yes, yes.
I just have a question for Greg on funding on this. Are you basically thinking of this all through taxation? Or,
We don't have anything left in the fund.
Right, I mean, so, if you look at the bottom of capital, you know, we show the funding sources. So if you look at the bottom of 195, you see the 2.1 million in general taxation, and I'm showing 550,000 in fund balance use.
It was one or the other. They're not broken down by line as to
Right.
which is fund balance and which is tax.
Yeah, we will do that for the
Yeah.
town meeting,
Okay,
for the
like,
town
we're not-
meeting.
We're not voting on that part tonight.
no,
Voting on approving these two capital items.
these two line items, the overall capital.
Right.
I move that we approve the ambulance as presented 470 and the cardiac monitors at 54,000.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dean seconds. Any discussion?
I guess my only comment is we're ordering, it takes 2 years, right? So we're ordering it, we're not gonna actually pay the cash, right, for 2 years.
So we're authorizing.
But we're taking 470 grand in cash now, right? And we're like setting it aside,
Or
knowing that for 2 years,
It's gonna sit there.
it's just gonna sit there. I don't know.
I don't think we have a choice. I think that in order for a town to enter a procurement order, the town voters have to have appropriated the amount.
But do they have to actually put the money in the bank account?
No. It's,
No.
it's,
Isn't that your question?
it's a general account. It's in the, it would be still in free cash if it wasn't pulled out of free cash.
Okay, well, maybe I misunderstood what you said, Mike. I thought you were saying it has to be authorized. That's the vote at the town meeting.
I guess what I'm asking, the answer,
Included in the tax rate.
Has to be actually taxed, to be put in the cash.
Is it?
I guess the question, yes, maybe no, right? Why not, let's have the 470? Like, could we do 235 this year and 235 next year?
They can't order it.
Can't order it if you do that. I guess the question for Greg really is the question for you, Greg, is do the taxpayers in town see this, the hit for this now or later?
They would see it now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it'll basically go into reserve, it'll flow down into reserves, and then it'll get pulled.
No, it's not in reserves. It's
It goes
in,
into the fire
it's in the appropriation
It's
and then pulls it forward.
Okay,
It's
so,
that roll forward thing, right?
so it's in the
Correct.
fire equipment fund.
No, it isn't.
It's
There's
in its
no fire
own,
The fund. It's
It's in-
in the appropriation for the town. Just
Okay.
like it's a capital appropriation
So it gets
And it
carried.
stays there until it's spent.
Okay.
It's like accounting versus cash, right?
Right.
So cash,
Yeah, okay.
cash is gonna be 470 collected right now, and then it's gonna sit there.
Basically, all the town money's in the same pot.
Right, it's collecting dust. From an accounting perspective, it's as if you spent it today, even though you know, real world, you're not spending it for 2 years. So Greg, is that true though? Like, we couldn't order it? Like, what if we did 235 for this fiscal year and 235 for the next fiscal year? You know what I mean? Like,
So a technical reading of state law would say that you have to have an appropriation before you enter into a contract, the appropriation for the full amount, either through borrowed monies or through straight allocation. That's the strict reading of the law. Now, could you, sign a contract, sometimes do it. It's technically not legal.
Go that route.
System. Just, you have a lot of money,
Right,
let's just make sure we budget the right amount of interest we're gonna get on that cash flow,
Right.
right?
There you go, yes.
That budget for investment income is
Right.
minuscule compared to how much we're actually gonna get sitting on all this cash.
right.
so the motion is on the floor.
Yeah, it makes my happy.
Seconded.
I second the motion is on the floor.
Any,
By the way, I haven't heard anything on that since I brought it up.
any other discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay,
Yeah, Greg, just to mention on that point, like, that's not a fire department or even a tonight thing, but I wanna make sure we get a right investment income budget number. Knowing how much cash, and interest rates are not gonna fall to zero in, 4 months, right?
Yeah, understood.
Let's,
okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. And as always, feel free to come by, have a cup of coffee. We'd love to have you guys stop in and I'll get you the information.
This is great work, and I know you're exposed to all our wranglings. This is what we do. But thank you.
You learn a lot by watching it though. Thank you guys very much. Great job.
Thank you.
Great job. Have a good night.
You leaving, Brian?
It's the fire.
Yes.
What's next on your agenda?
FinCom reserve account. I know,
oh, yeah, it wasn't a million times? 2 million?
This was a good exchange of ideas and no raised voices.
no,
This was great.
It's,
no 6 pages worth of fires.
and
No balance
the
sheet.
only. But like, the reason we all know that is because what we compare, right? Like it's good, right? We just hockey stick, right? We did a proverbial hockey stick, right?
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the FinCom reserve account.
Right.
Andrea Greg sent us the 8-year history
Yes.
of how the reserve account had been used, like we asked.
What page is this book?
It's not in there.
It's not in there.
We have to do this.
16 months.
Okay, no, okay. I just thought it would be something.
No, he sent us the spreadsheet.
No, I get that, into the details. I'm just saying,
The FinCom reserve fund account is on page 69, the
Right.
amount.
that's all I'm asking.
That's what I was looking for, yeah. So it's in the budget now for 190.
Yes.
So if you're thinking about how we arrived at the 190,
No,
okay.
I think that we certainly had years. So you look at, if you go back in time, you look at 2016, We spent basically the whole budget and 30,000 on water main breaks and 100,000 on the boat ramp. And then Parks and Recs increased salaries of 18,000. So that's what happened back in 2016.
Right.
So the boat ramp was, we entered a contract.
It was sort of an outlier, but
It was problematic and it cost us much more to complete the boat ramp because we had to hire a new contractor and fix what the original contractor had done wrong. So that was unusual. Water main breaks, I think that we don't have as many as we used to have.
But we've had a couple this year.
Right.
And then. Again, from a relative perspective, OT should be going
Yep.
down, I mean, the fire chief.
But I'm going back to this 8-year history like we asked. So in 2016, there was no OT in it. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're at 2017, and again, there's no OT in it. But it is, if I can match this up, it would be easier because my printout's no good.
50,000 is not a true. So,
50,000 was for trash,
Oh, yeah, so we entered a new contract with trash.
right?
Well, no, the company went out of, they stopped serving
Right, yes.
municipalities
Yeah.
and, right, and then we ended up eating that, and that was a.
We had to sign a new contract with Waste Management.
Waste Management.
Yeah. And so it cost us 50 grand. DPW operations audit. Planning board salaries, that was just because the Affordable Housing Trust was put into existence, so that was a one-off. Fire department. Emergency repairs. 17 grand.
I mean, Greg, can I just ask a question for you to confirm? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Is it fair to say that out of all these different things, because there's 40 or 50 different things that have, right, come out of this account, but high level, I kind of put them in two buckets. There's the things that were like really, really urgent, that if we didn't have cash in the FinCom reserve fund to use, we'd have like a problem. And then there's a bucket of other stuff that like, you know, it actually wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? You know, if we didn't have the cash in there. Is that fair?
well, I mean, technically, you can only use the reserve fund for unforeseen needs. Well, that's definition from the state.
All right, let me try to re-articulate.
It's money we spent that we needed to pull out of the FinCom reserve in order to cover a bill.
No, I understand that, but I'm further subdividing that into two buckets. In other words, like, let's use firefighter overtime, right? If we didn't have the cash in the FinCom reserve to transfer to cover the firefighter overtime, I would assume that would be a big problem, right?
Right, we would have to go for supplemental appropriation.
Correct. Versus, let me pick something in the other bucket. I don't know, repairing the COA van. Like, you know,
Well, you still have to fix it.
right, but from a timing perspective, it's not like a, you know.
You just wouldn't have the van running.
Those
Right,
are
you wouldn't
more,
like it, the world doesn't end if you have one van that, you know.
The repair is done before it comes to the FinCom for approval. The expenditure has occurred before it comes to us.
And you've got to resolve it within the calendar year, or you end up rolling over like we did this last year with
Right.
something that.
Right, it takes a 9/10 vote then, but
so I
anyway.
agree that half
Right.
is for emergencies and half is more for end of the year accounting, bookkeeping.
So if you sort of go up, Mike, I think 30,000 feet, there's money coming down into reserves. The general fund reserves, because we've budgeted higher than actuals and revenue may have been under budgeted. And then over on the side, because Greg is not able to go totally across the board and go to like the library fund and take savings there and apply it to OT somewhere else. We get into these silos where we have to use the reserve to make the budgeting work. But at the end of the day, you could come cleaner, as you point out sometime, digging into reserves.
No,
Because
but you
everything
can't do
flows.
that during the year.
No, you do that the next year. That's where looking at the overall reserve budget.
Yeah, but we're just looking at the FinCom reserve right now, as to what level
Right.
to set it at.
Yeah.
And if you've spent something in fiscal year 24.
Right.
You either have to have a supplemental appropriation at town meeting, or you need to take it out of FinCom reserve.
Right.
You cannot take it out of the town reserve fund until the next fiscal year.
Correct.
So we can't use that reserve money
I
to
was
deal
looking at-
with
I was looking at
these.
this more in the long term rather than the actual year, which is what we're trying to solve.
I would
here.
like to separate the two.
I hear you.
So Sarah, to your point, all this stuff has already been spent.
Yeah,
So. So Greg, are you and Andrea tracking these overages, meaning? As these monies are spent for these 30 different things, if they add up to an amount greater than the FinCom reserve fund, whatever that number is, like. Then you end up in this situation where what, you have to get this supplemental.
Correct, that's when we triggered the supplemental
November.
request.
No, so my question is, are you and Andrea tracking all of these things? These 30, that whatever they are, right?
Yes,
Like, so that they cumulatively, you know what like, I'm not articulating well, am I?
no, we certainly track them to see how we're running overall and. You know, if we feel that there's not enough in reserve because something has gone more awry. Then we try to flag that early so that we can get things in motion for supplemental appropriation.
so,
Because we could do the supplemental appropriation actually like at that spring town meeting, right?
No, you can, yes. Yes.
oh,
I'm just saying, if you tracks it early enough, you'd actually take care of it in the current fiscal year.
are you comfortable if we drop the FinCom reserve account down to 150?
It's a little lower than I would set it. But I'm not, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it.
Yeah, I did an average, it comes out to 144.
I just think 150 is kind of a round number. We know that we've got a potential issue with overtime with the fire this year. Which we're hoping overtime, we won't have the issues next year. Which would give more leeway.
To your point, they're tracking. Right, as long as they're tracking it the way that Greg described, then, and to that point, whether it's 150 or 190 or 250, there's gonna be possible situations where. Something happens legal and they're gonna have to wave a red flag, and it's gonna have to be a supplemental thing anyways, right?
Sarah, would it make sense to ask what's being tracked at the moment and where it stands halfway through the year? I mean,
That doesn't, we're just talking about setting the budget for fiscal year 25.
Yeah.
If
So
if we want more detail during the fiscal year regarding that, we can get it, but that's a separate discussion.
but it's indicative of where the problems are, Russ.
Yeah, it's separate, but it's very connected, actually. I mean, it's very connected.
If I look at last year, it's salaries. You know, more than half of the money went to either overtime or salary issues and lifeguards and all of it. So I was just wondering if those, if salaries were continuing to be such a driver, that those are immediate and must be now.
Well, I think that
So,
21 through 2023 were somewhat unusual because we held the tax rate abnormally low. And we held the tax rate at less than it cost us to run the town. Is that right, Greg?
that's correct.
So that's the problem for those years, that they were, I would say, abnormal years.
So I agree that they're two separate things, they're related, so I personally, I'm good with the 150, but to your point, I also would like a current fiscal year
Yeah.
update from Greg and Andrew to know what that number is, right?
So if, you know, if I respond to that tonight, what I know will be going over is fire overtime and police overtime. Those are the two that we have flagged to date. But those are the only two that are currently raising a red flag.
What do those add up to, just
The-
rough ballpark?
Probably 120.
Okay, for the current fiscal year, he's saying police and fire OT for current fiscal year.
So about 20,000 for police and about 100,000 for.
No,
No.
fire's only over by 38,000 year to date. He's talking year to date.
Yeah, I'm projecting for the year ahead, for
Oh,
the
you're
full.
projecting for the year?
They budgeted 30 and they're projecting 100,000.
Yeah, so it's an additional 70.
Additional 70 and another,
Yeah, 20 for police, 100 for fire, for the.
No,
whole
50 for
fiscal
police.
70 and 50. It was the 120, I guess.
correct.
And-
You know, I'm a little nervous about some electric costs, but you know, we're talking, probably less than 10,000.
And we're okay on legal?
That's a wild card. That I could well see us doing a supplemental for. I don't know if it's hard to say. I'll have a much better sense after the middle of March.
I make a motion to drop it to 150,000.
I second that, I think that.
Peter seconds. Any more discussion? Take a vote? All in favor? Unanimous. So we just approved the reserve fund for the FinCom at 150,000.
Right.
What's today's date, the 10th?
Could you tell me who made the motion and seconded?
Mike made the initial and Peter.
Peter
seconded.
seconded it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey Greg,
Yep,
so, like we have what we call a safety, what do we call it? Public safety. Like from an accounting point of view, it's called public safety, so that way if like this item, the police comes in high, the thing when fire comes low, you can kind of, right, you can kind of do a left pocket, right pocket thing.
correct.
So my question is, I'm sure the answer's gonna be no, but I'll ask anyways, is there a way to like do that from the total, consolidated point of view?
No.
Well,
would-
it depends how you vote it. So you could vote it that way. We currently do not vote it that way at town meeting.
That gives the town much more authority to spend what they want. Unrelated to the budget. That's what the school does. The school, we approve one number, and then they don't spend according to the budget they gave us. They spend however they want. And if you did that at the town level, the town could spend any amount they wanted on any line.
Well, just one caveat to that is it requires, the way we currently do it, any shifting within the category of funds still requires FinCom and select board approval.
For the town side,
Yeah, but that's, well, I wouldn't support that. I think that since we've gone to the broader categories, we're seeing much more movement between accounts. Whereas when we voted on each line item, there was much less movement between accounts,
We couldn't.
much less flexibility.
Right, because it wasn't allowed.
but to me, moving between accounts is better than the alternative, right? Like if one thing comes in below budget and another thing comes above budget, if you can left pocket, right pocket, then
But it's a lack of accountability is what I'm just being about.
Well, we're still gonna track people on what they forecast and what the actual was. I mean,
But you're not
we're
gonna have any control over it.
That's-
I know, but still, that, you know,
That's like saying if I do a household budget and I screwed up on my home insurance budget, but I did better on my gasoline, then I'm gonna like punish myself instead of just like moving the money between two accounts. I mean, why
well,
would I?
we're
why would
moving
I
money,
do that?
we're moving money between the accounts.
I know we, and I'm saying that's a good thing. I'm just trying to, you know, think out loud if we could just do it even more.
I think we have a compromise going on. We allow a certain amount, but not as much as you want. Why don't we move on? We will punish you if you're.
Yes.
Not staying with me.
I thought I only get punished at home.
There's pain going on.
Every forecast is wrong, they can do it, right?
Exactly.
Very true.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion of the stabilization and town reserves.
Right.
For use in fiscal year 25. I did some numbers to just try to figure out where we were, because I had to take it from multiple pages.
I get in, okay.
And what I came up is that on some page of this booklet, it says the fiscal year 24 estimated reserves are 4,331, 4,331,500. Of that, almost 2 million is stabilization and about 2.4 million is free cash.
Yeah, if you look at, on page 22,
No.
it has that.
1953. Well, I gotta find it again.
Yeah, page 22.
22. What page?
22.
22.
1953, 150 is stabilization. And free cash is 2378340. For the total of 4331500. And then I took the budget of 40,851,629 times 0.08, which we said is our target, right? Which comes to 3,268,130. If I subtract that from the 4 million number that we have, it comes out that we have about 1,063,000 to spend for fiscal year 25. And based on this capital, where it says how we're spending money, we're spending $549,600 on capital. Which seems to me we have about 514,000 left. Is that correct? Greg?
Yes,
Okay. So the thing that's not included in our budget, and I don't know if there's other things, but OPEB is not included in this budget at all, right?
no, it is.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Where's that?
If you look on page 21 in the summary, it's part of that warrant article category.
I
52?
mean, I see page 52 on the index. Okay, Greg.
Page
Yes.
52 in the,
Oh, yeah,
page
Yes,
52.
correct.
but it doesn't say how much we're spending.
I'm not sure, I'm sure. It's like 290 some odd.
97,979.
That's the revenue.
But this is,
contribution to it.
yeah, that's just that's where it currently stands.
There's no number in this budget that
Well,
tells us the amount being spent on OPEB, is there?
There is, at the
Oh.
fourth paragraph, 289.
297,979 under page 52, right under summary.
No, that is revenue from
revenue.
You gotta go a little lower down.
Go down a little lower. And it's
Oh.
two
If the
89.
OPEB recommendation of 289,300 is approved, these funds will be transferred.
But this is April 2023 town meeting. We're talking April 2024 town meeting.
Yeah, look up under the summary line on page 52.
Yeah,
the town of Manchester is projecting 297,979 from the general fund in FY 25. That's the budget you're debating.
I don't know, yeah. Okay, that was the number I thought.
Okay,
Okay,
so it's just under 300,000.
Okay.
And that shows up under, again, I was flipping back to the summary budget page on 21. It's part of, because we voted as a separate warrant article. That's why we lump it in the warrant articles. You see a 606 number, 606,871 on page 21.
okay,
So what threw us is the word revenue, but really what you're saying here is our annual contribution.
Yeah, it's revenue from the general fund. So this, because this is talking about a special fund, right? This page 52 is the last page of various funds. We have different funds, the general fund, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the OPEB Trust Fund. And so the trust fund gets its revenue from the general fund.
so the 606,871 warrant articles includes OPEB. What else does that include?
Yeah, I knew you were gonna ask me that next, and I'm not, I'm not remembering offhand. What else does it? It has OPEB, it has. I'm gonna have to, I'm sorry, I don't remember that offhand.
So this total budget book we have is the only amount coming from reserves, the 549.6? Or are you assuming warrant articles are coming from free cash?
My memory is that it's only the capital that we were allocating from the fund balance, from free cash. I will double check that, but I'm pretty sure I'm accurate when I say that. Let me call up my, I've got another
Greg, is that
spreadsheet.
under available funds in the summary on ClearGov? There's a number of that's like 1,297,000.
339, yeah.
So that's a combination of funds. Let me,
Enterprise, no, second,
well, it could, the harbor fund,
Okay.
let me. I'm trying to find my other spreadsheet. If I can do it quickly, that'll help us, but I'm not sure I'm gonna find it right away.
so if we added the 300,000 for OPEB to the 500,000 that I was saying we still had left to spend from free cash, if we went down to the 8%, that's about 800,000,
Just that.
which we could theoretically pay from stabilization. If we wanted to reduce the stabilization.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. The stabilization is really 1/8.
It's almost two.
Two. That does require, that's a 2/3 vote on town meeting floor, but there could be a compelling argument.
So they've
I
actually,
think the fact that the earnings on OPEB are substantially higher than the earnings we get in the town assets.
Plus just general time value of money, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
and we seem to have more than 50% of our target reserves in stabilization.
that's
60%.
that's the bigger problem, right?
Yeah.
It's like. It's just, it's sitting there, it's like. I know we gotta do 2/3, but like, right, so let's do it,
So
right?
you can construct a budget and rely on reserves for that budget, but you can't rely on stabilization for that budget unless you go to town meeting and get 2/3 vote. So
It's
we've gone around.
it's counterintuitive, right?
Right.
It's like, on paper, they want you to believe the stabilization is like a bigger security blanket, but it's actually not, because it's harder to get it out, right?
I mean, what do you think about that, Brad?
Oh, I'm okay with putting some additional monies, reduce stabilization, put it into
But,
the OPEB.
uh,
I mean, we'll meet with Dan Sherman, I think, this year, but we're pretty on track toward finishing up OPED by 2030 or 2032, I
it
think.
was earlier than that, because we
It's-
were
it's-
ahead of the game.
We're a little ahead of the game, so it could be earlier, it all depends on the market, but.
Call it 2030. I mean, I know their ROI is something like 7.5%, which is actuarial, not necessarily real, but that's what we're working to, which is pretty healthy.
So, Greg, can you confirm something for me?
Should we try?
So the assets in stabilization are separate from the assets in, free cash, right?
Yeah, they're treated differently in terms of investment, is that what you mean? But yes.
Correct, and that's exactly where I'm going, right? So the free cash, that's the investment policy, it's very tight, right? There's only 4 things, right? MMT and bank, everything.
No, stabilization is the one with 4,
I think it's the other way.
no. Oh,
Greg, can you confirm? I'm pretty sure.
our-
Stabilization has stuff like in equities and stuff like that, right?
it's with the outside investment person.
Sure, but I'm just saying the actual
But yes,
asset,
yes,
right?
yeah, it's a little more, slightly more aggressively invested.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that's where I'm going, like, I don't want us, you know where I'm going. You know what I mean? We're not supposed to be, even with an outside advisor, we're not supposed to be like,
Right,
you
we're
know,
doing it to,
buying and selling stocks and stuff.
right.
But that's what's in, so
So you're advocating use
one more feather in the cap for this, for why I like this, because it takes money out of this more aggressive pool and it gives it to a professional, what is it, whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? Yeah, I get that. So that's one more reason why I like this idea. We shouldn't be investing in stocks, like, even with an outside investor, outside advisor, I'm sorry, like, that's not. We should be in bank MMAs, MMTT, CDs, very boring, but very conservative stuff.
There's no hedge.
Right.
okay. So do I have a motion to make the OPEB contribution for fiscal year 20, make an $800,000 OPEB contribution from stabilization for fiscal year 25?
I'll make it.
Okay, just so, for those who didn't pick up every little thing here, because I can't hear Greg very well, my hearing aids. So that would meet our current, that would satisfy our current year contribution. And also reduce our obligation by the additional amount.
Yeah, so we were going to contribute 300,000.
Exactly.
And now we would be contributing 800,000. When I asked last summer to get a number from Dan Sherman as to how much we needed to fund to pay it off completely,
Yes.
it was a $3 million number. And we obviously don't have 3 million,
Right.
but the 800,000 would pay down more of the OPEB liability and have it
So
invested.
accelerating the.
Yeah.
You're doing a huge prepayment on your 30-year mortgage.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, you're not paying it off, but you're doing a huge
And
prepayment on the principal so that,
The
right?
number I was
Was
missing was the
better.
3 million number.
Yeah,
you just
okay.
said. I wasn't sure you were
Yeah.
actually.
right, with a better return on the investment too.
And the 800,000 gets us down to the percent reserve fund.
Yes,
Yes.
That's right, yes.
And it
I
pulls
guess-
stabilization, which is frees it up a little.
So
It frees up.
brings
What, Greg?
stabilization down to 1.1.
Well, I'm just wondering why you wouldn't do the 800,000 on top of the 300. You're taking money that is sitting,
Because
Yeah, I think, yes,
Yes,
yeah, I think he's right.
I thought the 300
it's in the budget.
is in the budget.
it is.
So you're saying the source of funding for the 300 in the budget is stabilization?
No,
No,
he said it was
No.
taxes.
Tax.
Correct.
We've already got that in the budget.
That's
And so
right.
we're saying, he's saying, well, why not take $800,000 on top of the three,
Top of the three.
and the 800 being out of the.
Oh, I see, okay.
Right, right.
To do 1.2 million for stabilization, 800. 1.2 million for OPEB,
1.1.
1.1.
thank you, 1.1 for OPEB.
Of which.
Of
300
which-
Is from taxation.
300 from
800 is from
taxation. Okay, and 800 from stabilization?
Right.
So the motion would be $800,000 from,
No, I think we want to do the whole OPEB.
1.1.
it's already in the budget.
No, but it's a separate warrant article. So I think we want to approve a warrant article.
So you gotta have the 297.
I just use 300,000.
You want to keep the two numbers separate, right? Or not?
Well, in the warrant, we'll be voting for one number for OPEB and just funding it from two sources.
Right, but as we know, we need a 2/3 approval for any dollar we take out of
Oh, so you're
stabilization.
saying two warrant articles, maybe?
Right, I'm saying like,
Two warrant
I guess I'm
Oh.
rounding to 300 grand.
Yeah,
I know,
so am I.
whatever.
Okay,
So I think there's an 800 piece and a 300 piece.
Okay,
And the
okay.
800 piece, that has to get approved to 2/3.
Right.
We're saying take 800 out of stabilization, which will bring that down to 1153 roughly. But then the 300 is, separately over here. Yes, combined, you add the two, that's the total
Okay.
going,
okay.
I think.
And who knows, we have another 2 months of meetings here, maybe we'll add another something to the stabilization number, so it won't be 800, it might be a little more. Greg doesn't want to hear this.
So thank you, I now understand what you're saying.
Okay,
Ask for 800, stabilization, maybe I'll ask. School.
But
And
my only
the
other,
theory is that the money we're saving on interest from our liability is greater than the amount that we'd have to pay on a bond if we have to go for a bond.
We get a really good rate of return through OPEB.
Right.
So the more we put into that, the more it's leverage, it's better. More efficient.
It will
use of
reduce-
our money.
reduce our future contributions to the extent to which we earn on the investments.
So as a strategy, just because right now we're in for roughly percent for the reserve fund.
Yeah.
Right. Stabilization. I don't know if we're ultimately wanting to target stabilization being a certain specific portion of that.
That's what I'm thinking we need to do. Yeah, we've never had a target and when our finances were really bad, like in 2011, when we came on,
Yeah.
we started putting money into stabilization because our reserves were so low, but we didn't have any plan. And then we stopped it because we felt we put enough in, but I agree we need a plan.
Yeah, we also held the town meeting, you spoke about a plan.
Um,
1 million would be about.
A third.
Use 40 million, so it's 2.5 million.
You want 1/4 of your reserves to be in stabilization. I mean, that's another, what is that?
No, we're much higher
Opposed
than
to
that.
50%?
We're much higher now, but what Peter's saying, I think, is we target.
Yeah. Part.
25% would be in stabilization, 75% would be.
Yes. It's the plan. I mean, to me, it's a pretty understandable plan.
Well, we're almost building it back. We could go for-
Yeah, so 25% would be a million.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, got it, yeah.
I like
Okay,
going
so-
for pulling a clean 800 out of stabilization.
Okay,
How would you like that motion to be drafted? Trying to achieve all of that.
It's something that's,
So I'll take a
So
look.
we would want to make a motion to take 800,000 out of stabilization for the purpose of paying OPEB. And then we want to do another motion for the 300,000 for OPEB.
Correct.
Out of the budget. And that cues up a warrant article that I guess would have to go to the selectmen to say, yeah, they want to. Well, or Greg or whatever, wants to get on the town warrant somehow.
Does that leave stabilization where you want it to be?
It's still a little bit high.
Still a little high, but
I'd say
That's
it's
what I
the right
read,
direction.
is that, okay, I mean,
It's gonna be 1.1 instead of 1 million.
Yeah.
here's the thing, when you look at those numbers on page 22,
yes,
the stabilization row
yes.
is kind of a fixed number. It only changes by the investment gains and losses, right?
Yep.
But the free cash,
Is in motion.
right, that changes a lot. Because you get all the conservatives and gozadas in addition to the investment income. A lot of conservatives and gozadas in free
Right.
cash, right? Revenues came in higher than expected, expenses came in lower than expected. The
FEMA money.
FinCom reserve fund had extra cash, that goes, right?
So that's why I want you, a policy, which I think we want is, so one
Yeah.
quarter reserves are in stabilization and the balance is in free cash.
I agree in theory, but I guess what I'm saying is there's so much movement in the free cash one. It's just gonna be hard, you know,
I see.
see what I'm saying? To predict.
Yeah,
It's-
you're right. Now, there's that target, and we'll have to keep more flexible in that.
No, but it's 25, what's 25, 2% of our target. So we target 2% of our operating budget to be in stabilization.
Right, so that's different than what Peter's saying, and I think that's an easier way
Yeah.
to target,
I think
right?
it's easier.
That was the
Okay.
2.5 that Anson said, right? You know, it's like,
Target 2%
target 2% in stabilization.
of operating,
Of the reserve target.
of our operating budget in reserve, in stabilization.
And again, what's nice about that is, we're gonna take 800 grand out, hopefully, for, you know, so we'll drop it down to almost 1 million, and like I was just saying. Minus the gains and losses, it's not gonna
Change.
change much, right?
Yeah, but I was just saying the motion needed to also include what you're now writing. I think it's not just the numbers, it's that we've got a plan here. I didn't know
Right.
that the
Right,
motion needed to say the plan is, no,
I don't think that needs to go to motion, but
yeah, I think we made a motion to change our target to 8%
yes.
for total reserve, so I think it makes sense to have a motion to target
2% of the 8%.
2% of operating budget.
2% of our total operating budget in stabilization and 6%
6%.
in free cash.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
Yes.
knowing that the free cash
Will vary all over the place.
will vary, but the stabilization will be.
But again, what's nice is it's easier to adjust the free cash.
Right.
There's more volatility, more movement, but it's also easier to access, right?
Okay,
We're watching that fuel budget, aren't you?
We're
watching your fuel budget.
so do you want me to make that motion?
Yes, would.
I make a motion that we target 2% of our total operating budget in stabilization and 6% of our total operating budget in free cash.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous, okay. Now we
Do we also have to say we're making a full 800?
Now we gotta go back to the motion of,
Recommending that we use 800,000 from stabilization for the purpose of funding OPEB.
right,
You want to say based on the new policy?
No. no,
You probably think about things, how good, what's in that.
that could be in the box on the floor.
yeah,
Right, you know what I mean?
okay. So do we have a motion to use 800,000 of stabilization to fund OPEB in fiscal year 25?
Just, you know, something I'm saying.
Okay. Maury moved, Andy second. All in favor? Aye, unanimous. Do we want to do the 300,000 from taxation?
Yes.
We want to round it to 300,000, not have that odd amount?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we have a motion to use to use 300,000 in taxation for an additional OPEB contribution.
Can we use that as a safety valve as we get on further on, whether we want to spend that, depending on other?
We can revote things.
Yeah.
I
okay,
just-
Okay.
I just would like to get things done as we go along, but we can always, we're gonna have to vote on the warrant article.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That we might find out. Yeah.
So do we have a second? Did we second that?
So moved it.
You moved it?
Second.
Peter seconds. All in favor? Aye. Okay. I figured you can find the 3,000 someplace, Greg.
Yes,
The 11,000.
Well, we gave them 40 by lowering the FinCom.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Correct.
Correct.
correct. We are, our county retirement number came in 40,000 less than we were projecting as well.
Oh, good.
What did?
There you go.
What did?
The county retirement, the pension.
The pension came in 40, okay.
Right.
So when we get to that number, we can drop it by 40,000.
Okay. Maybe I'll be able to up the OPEB even more.
Well, that's.
Yeah. Okay. We want to do CPC?
Well, I just wanted to, that's the next order of business.
Yep.
So, we're having a meeting tomorrow and we're probably gonna finalize the application process. I know we worked all summer identifying pots of money in different places, and I think I've uncovered another one in the Affordable Housing Trust. We funded 200,000 for the trust last year, and we got another 200,000 this year. And you know, they're not spending it, they're just stockpiling it to see when an opportunity to do affordable housing comes in.
And, yeah, I can speak to that. I'm the finance committee representative on the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah, okay.
In 2018, the Affordable Housing Trust and the Manchester Housing Authority went out with an RFP to double the number of affordable units in those locations. Nobody responded to the RFP. They spent $50,000 hiring a consultant to do a proof of concept, which included the DPW Pleasant Street site. Went out to an RFP and again received no response. During COVID, since COVID, they spent $167,000 to subsidize rents and mortgages of people in Manchester, which benefited 44 families. We were the first town to do that. We then went out and put out an RFQ to find a developer to work with us on the Housing Authority and the Affordable Housing Trust to develop those projects. HOAP came forward, which is a nationwide organization, has been working with them. We're in the process of trying to identify adjacent personally owned properties, which might give sufficient acreage to add units. And the input we've received from people in the business is, in order to entice a developer to come in to do that type of project, the town needs to be able to commit 5 to 10%. And if it's a $30 million project, that would be 1.5 to 3 million. The trust currently has 1.2 million. So I think that there's been some talk on social media about why don't you buy some of these houses on the market? But that would take all of the money in the trust and only come up with 1 unit. So that's why they're quote unquote stockpiling it, is they need to accumulate money. And POAP seems to think that it can be viable. And we're having some preliminary discussions on a large piece of land adjacent to the plains with the landowners to see if that's why we don't even know if it's doable, but if that's viable.
I'm just trying to understand, so if we do something like this project you just mentioned with the town has to put in, would you say 5 to 10%?
Yeah,
Um,
that would come out of the Affordable Housing Trust.
no, understood, but where I'm going is, does that mean the town still, or whatever entity, but town related entity gets to kind of control the levers? Because we've got skin in the game?
Well, the project would be, it's, the state controls the Newport Park, Plains, and, Loading Place to some extent. And so it would be a joint, the state is not providing the sufficient capital to maintain the units. And so what you try to do is bring a developer in, build some market rate housing, increase the amount of affordable housing so that you have the cash flow to be able to maintain the development and not have to rely on the state anymore for the capital, and to have the state put some skin in the game because they're getting out from under something a business they don't want to be in, and then use tax credits and, but and I don't know going forward to what extent the housing authority would be involved in management.
Okay.
But certainly the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority would be going out for bid for a developer and would be selecting the developer.
No, I understand that, but I guess the way I'd understood it before was, we just find a plot of land, then we find a developer, and we kind of say, here's the land, and you developer, you go, build a bunch of stuff, some is market rate, some's not, right? But our only skin in the game was the land. But now it sounds like there's this, we actually be putting in cash of 5 to 10%, so I'm just like.
And no land, not the land necessarily.
Oh, so no, oh,
Well, see, we don't, part of the problem is, the reason there were no responses to the RFPs is because the town hasn't determined that they're not using the DPW site on Pleasant Street. So that puts a complicating factor on. They're talking about using it for public safety. So you need to somehow find other land, to have sufficient space to build. And there don't seem to be very many sites in Manchester. You don't have a lot of places to build.
No, I understand, it already felt weird to me that we would take like a piece of town land and just kind of like
Right.
throw it at a private for-profit developer, who's then gonna go build some market-based units, and the guy's gonna, make a ton of money. And then there's gonna be some units that are properly, I don't know, the right word is,
Deed-restricted.
deed-restricted, low
Yeah.
income, whatever,
Right.
right?
So instead of, the town wouldn't be giving land, the Affordable Housing Trust would be giving money.
Right, I mean, so it makes it sound like the Affordable Housing Trust is like a partner with the developer, which just seems kind of weird.
Well, they are, they're furthering the development of affordable
It's an
housing, but they're enticing a developer to bid on the project they're not gonna get anything in return for their money other than increasing the number of units on the SHI.
I guess that's where I'm going, that's the part that makes it weird, right? If I'm a developer, if you're just gonna invest some money with me, you know, you're a minority investor, you get 10% of the game, I make 90%, you know. I don't know. Just-
There's no return.
And it might not be that much money. It depends on the developer and it depends on the project and how much money you need to have the numbers work. Right now, these are not very profitable projects because of the interest rates. And the tax credits have been a mess. Nothing's been available from the state in tax credits.
Yeah, but the full benefit to the town is that SHI, it's the
Right.
ability to be able to defend a 40B project.
I get that, but I'm just trying to come at that the right way, like, and I get that there's only $1.5 million, which is not a lot of money, right? So to your point, buying one house could be done, but it doesn't, in my mind, I think of debt, I think of leverage, and I think of if you had $1.5 million, you know, even if that represents 20%, then, you know, you should be able to borrow $6 million, right? And so now, what would $7.5 million get you? I mean, I don't know, that should get something decent, right? Like, I don't know, 8, 10 unit. Condo apartment, something, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And then you're not doing a deal with the devil, you know? Developer, you know?
Well, but the half acre of land next to me sold for 1.1 million. Doesn't get you much. Doesn't give you many units. And
Well, I don't-
construction is terribly expensive now.
$7.5 million would easily get you, even with land, would get you, I don't know, 6 units.
I don't think it's gonna get you very many. I don't know.
It's a little over one.
I'm told by people in the business, developers in town, that say you really need 3 acres and 30 units, I think, in order to have a project financially feasible.
Yeah, the reason we're having this conversation.
Is because
CPC, I don't wanna see any objections at the last minute when
Okay, I
the
just want to be
CPC.
clear why we're having the conversation.
It was the thought that we're putting money aside
Yes.
into another pot. And, you know, we worked a lot of, all summer identifying these, and I just wanted to bring that up. That's what's, and it's for viable reasons, but it's there, you know, just, I'm trying.
So now me to sort of ask a question, we always seem like we're scrambling to find money, projects for CPC. Lining this up with like government agencies, which in December, you spend it or you lose it.
Right.
Oh. I'm just, you know, and then CPC comes back and says, well, we've invested in all these projects, but the town, you need to stand up and maintain these things. And it's sort of like kind of a push-pull. And I'm also looking at a 20% reimbursement. So it's basically like going to the taxpayers and saying, knocking on every door and saying, you give me $1 and the state will give you another 20 cents. And then we'll take that $1.20 and we'll do something with it. And it's like, right, you know, how can we make this more efficient? And I wonder if it's sort of counterintuitive, but should we put more money into the Affordable Housing Trust and get away from things like parks and steeples and all this other stuff that's more,
Moving on the beach.
yeah. You know,
Whatever that might
if we're gonna get into this for 1.5%, should we put it into something that really moves the needle eventually? Go before the taxpayers and say, yeah, we're not doing Moby maps on the beach and steeples, but we're putting it into affordable housing. And you gotta be patient with town, but this is our long-term objective and do that.
Right. Well, that's another question. I mean, we basically, whoever submitted an application, if it fit the criteria, then it's being advanced. You know, it's not a, do we really need a portico on the Manchester, you know, and it's more just, look, if we have money in the budget and people are submitting an application and it meets the criteria, then we have money in the budget and we're approving it.
I'll tell you, because I'm setting committee for just a portion of last year, but there's a completely different tenor to their meetings than our meetings. You know, it is that sort of come on, there's a lot of money kind of a thing. I do think that it'd be worthwhile to have a little bit more of a screening process or strategy, maybe, not that they don't, I mean, I.
Right.
Stick with it long enough to know, you know, but it just seems like some of the stuff that does come across is kind of just arbitrary. Like, oh, yeah, it's one of these over there.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
And it's still tax dollars.
It is. I mean, it is it's, you know, it's literally $1 and it's 20 cents. I mean, if you take this budget and you divide it by the number of households in Manchester, it's like going to everybody's door and saying, I'd like $40. And oh, by the way, the state's gonna give another $8, and that $48 is gonna go towards something. And I just think we should be putting it toward things that are really gonna move the needle and advance town direction.
I agree 100%. So my question, how do we make that happen?
I think that's a CPC direction, which is, you know, first of all, there are the buckets, you know, there's historical preservation, there's open space, whatever.
Yeah.
You hit the 5% that I think you need to do on each of those. 10,
Yeah.
the 10% you need to do on those, and then you just like max out on something that, I don't know, my suggestion is take a good look at things that would really move the town forward and max out on that. And spend less time thinking about signage and singing beach and all this other stuff that's like come in the door and make a pitch. It's like you put it all toward affordable housing and hit the 10% minimums if you need to in the other places and
Call it a day.
10%. Where are we on that 10%?
For what?
For the affordable.
We're at 5%. 5, a little over 5%. The Potter House Hill units are not yet on the SHI.
But they.
Because that would be really moving the needle, right? I mean,
Right.
the others.
They're eligible. All the required paperwork has not been done.
Is anybody,
It's a long story.
what's the short version?
The hope is that the new, town planner can come in with a fresh look and talk to North Shore. John Forbeck had a conversation with him yesterday and he said they'd done everything they needed to do when it was with the town, so. There's a communication gap that needs to be bridged.
So high level, and I'm oversimplifying for sure, but when that all gets sorted out, what is,
That would be 29 additional units, which based on our housing production plan.
Yep.
Would demonstrate progress towards affordable housing and give us a 2-year leeway
Here we go.
before another 40B that could come in. But we're still a long way from getting to the 10%
because it's still
to
a
keep them all.
huge move in the right direction.
Yes,
So how do we facilitate that? How do we?
we're hoping the new town planner will do that. About 20 people have attempted to move it forward.
But I feel like it's like the fire chief talking about building the ambulance, right? It just took someone with the right knowledge to come in and all of a sudden, right, both like, right, we had how many prior fire chiefs and he comes in and it's like, yeah, like, didn't take a box, you just redo the form and it, you know, I mean, again, I'm oversimplifying, but I'm sure if someone has the right knowledge, then that should get done, right?
I think it's a question of priorities by different parties. And the priority is with the town to get it on the list. But the town does not have all the information necessary to get it on the list. And the people with the information necessary, it's not a high enough.
So Greg, how do we get this done?
Yeah, we've been working a little more earnestly on it the last month, and I'm hopeful that within a month or so, it'll be done.
Really?
Yeah.
Bob, that,
But Sarah's right, we don't own it and we don't control it, and it just hasn't been a priority on their end.
Which is strange, because there was this whole movement for raising money to.
But the people who were big on raising the money have spent countless hours trying to move it forward to no avail. So it's not like people haven't been trying.
It's just,
It's-
it's bureaucracy, right?
Yeah, I think it's lack of understanding of exactly what needs to be done.
Right, it's, yes.
You know, it's gotta go to the state and be approved by the state
Do we have, I know, I should probably know this, do we have a new town planner
next week.
Yes,
next week?
correct.
And so we know that this is on a top 3 list for that person to be working on, right?
Yeah, I reviewed the list with him yesterday.
Yeah, I think. That's $200,000.
This should be a huge priority.
Right.
Make it a priority.
I know it doesn't take the 10%, but
Make sure they have some.
it gives us 2 years, that's huge.
And a lot of people contribute a lot of money.
Right.
And they're frustrated.
Well, and part of the problem was that you have to go through a lottery process. And that lottery process has to be approved by the state. And North Shore made a commitment not to kick out anybody. So they're doing it one at a time. As people move on, then that unit becomes available to the lottery. So it's also been dragged out because of that commitment not to kick any uneligible folks out because they make too much money.
But they met the 7 units over a year ago.
No, I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
I just, it just would be really disappointing if all these people did the right thing and voted up funds and then it didn't even,
Right, exactly,
You would hope it goes the other way where it works and then it's a precedent and then you can
right,
kind of replicate, right?
exactly, right. Okay,
So I guess just on the CPC, I mean, church steeple restoration and UV window protection. And I mean, there's a bunch of things here that look like they're for entities that aren't town. And, I just wondering, yeah, how people feel about that.
I don't.
Well, everyone felt the steeple was such a town landmark that kind of pumped over the
I
use that it's.
I think they've spent money on the museum and the steeple before.
Yeah.
It's kind of like.
Oh, yeah. It's a story.
I've been on this committee long enough to deal with Cold Chapel, which is a CPC vortex.
Yeah. I don't think that's in here this year.
No, it's not.
Should never, ever be in there again.
But vortex being kind.
I don't know, we are taxing people in town to do projects for the town. And I'm just thinking, if we're behind affordable housing and there's apart from the numbers issue, there's a social benefit to, providing housing for people who can no longer afford to live here. That should be, in my humble opinion, a mission. Other things on this list, it's kind of like, we've got the money, let's figure out how to spend it. Why not think about how to direct it towards something that, as I said, moves.
I think everything from Parks and Rec should be on a master list with the town. And when they rise up to being something that wants to be done, at that point, you go to CPC and say, can you help fund part of this? Instead of the other way around, because they're bringing all these little projects that we would never approve to CPC. And I think it should be Parks and Rec projects that are felt to be beneficial to the town as a whole. And then see how much CPC money could be spent on.
So Cheryl was gonna double check on the basketball court resurfacing, and I said, no, that's fine, but are they gonna redo Sweeney Park? And is that contractor gonna use that area as staging? Should we hold off? So she was gonna check into that.
What's a Moby map?
The Moby mat is like a big ramp, so that handicapped people can take their wheelchair from the circle down to the water. The seats in the beach are pretty good, so I felt like that was returning that one. That the people paid. I did mention that, the real need at the beach seems to be the bathhouse, but.
Right.
Sure, no one's. Yeah, but nobody said anything about that.
I mean, that should be a town goal to rehab the beach house. And
Yes. I mean, if,
see
so if
how
you
much
stockpile,
CPC could put into that. Well, they used to stockpile and then last year they spent all their money.
right, I mean, if you stockpile Parks and Recs for 5 years,
Yeah, you
then
could,
you'd have a pretty good amount
for the
to
beach,
deal with
the bathhouse.
that house.
Yeah.
And it is historic renovation, as we know. We tried to do plastic floors and we could only do cedar or something.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so do we need to meet with the CPC sometime this next year, not for the fiscal year 25 budget? But after that, just to meet with them to kind of discuss our
Have
viewpoints?
this discussion.
Okay,
This is the speaker.
Seems to me we've just done a nice.
you might suggest that to them, that we want to do that sometime
Okay.
in 2024. Okay. Next item is to approve minutes.
I sent a little addition at the last minute. I'm sorry, I didn't send it sooner. The comment I had on the 25th, I think. I sent to Gail or to everyone this afternoon.
And Sarah gave me one and Andy had given me some, so I have 3 to submit and 3 to complete.
So what dates are we on?
Hold it, let me look at my calendar, which is here on the floor.
I didn't write them down.
I have it down. Here, 11/8, 11/29, and last week. And this week,
Those are ones we haven't gotten yet.
No, we don't have this week's or last week's.
correct.
We have 11/8 and 11/29 to approve. What's outstanding that we've given comments on, Gail?
You gave comments on 9/13, 10/25, and I don't have the piece, I don't have the comment you gave me, which was also October, I think. I mean, so right now, at the end of today, there are 4 sets of minutes outstanding. Everything else, I just need to post 3 sets of meeting minutes.
Okay, I don't think we can approve any tonight. I'm too confused as to what's approved and what isn't.
I think the 13th we approved last week.
You did approve that last week. Sarah, you gave me one edit to a different set, and then Dean gave me edits to 10/25. And that's 3 sets that were already approved with edits, and now I have
Okay.
the edits.
Okay, so those are.
That's where we were.
For that, it's-
Okay, so we have 11/8 and 11/29. Have you sent those to us?
No, I have not.
Okay, so we don't have any minutes that you've sent us that we have not approved.
No, but you will have some for next
Okay.
week. and You will
Okay,
enjoy them.
Thank you. Good, okay.
Yep.
So the other thing is the schedule. Next Thursday, the 18th, with police and harbor master. Greg, do you think that still works for them or do you not know yet?
I believe it does.
Okay. And then I heard from Ben Buttrick of the Essex FinCom, and they're willing to meet with us jointly here on January 24th.
Wait,
Okay, and
I throw one comment on that,
yeah,
and this is anecdotal, this is not scientific,
Yeah.
but from discussions that I've had with some key Essex people, let's say, it seems like they might be coming around to the idea that, you know, no Essex Elementary.
okay.
Well, I mean, it all comes down to money, right?
So,
And so, no, but where I'm going with that is, I mean, even, you wouldn't even want to spend the 750,000 on the study, right? If there's like a strong thought of
Right,
not, right?
right.
So,
Right, so we'll discuss that, and what I said to him is, I said, we think it would be useful for each FinCom to explain their financial goals for the fiscal year 25 school budget and town financial constraints, discuss what is realistic and whether any compromise can be made to attain a mutual agreeable path forward. He thought that would be helpful.
Well, our path is to,
I know,
all right,
So does this also include their town manager,
no, this is just the FinCom.
just FinCom?
Yeah, and so they're meeting on the 18th and they're gonna prepare something to present.
so we were otherwise gonna be meeting with DPW that night, so.
The BW is now January 31st. Library Parks and Recs is now February 14th, and School and Voltech are February 7th. And CPC is February 28th. Now that I've nailed down this joint FinCom, I'll send a list out to everyone.
The 14th, you said February 14th was library and what?
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec.
our next meeting next Thursday,
Yes,
just, if you could add it, I'll just throw out some comments at the next meeting, because we've already got over 2.5 hours. But I went to the finance subcommittee meeting last night before the school committee meeting. It's some pretty interesting information that I'd like to share. Again, I don't want to waste,
so I'll put that on next week's, you just kind of, okay.
Sure.
I'll have a item to prep for the joint meeting, and that can go into it, okay,
Sure.
on the 18th.
Before we, like, just ask a question about the business plan for the launch service. Right.
Okay,
I'm thinking the same thing everyone else is thinking. I believe you want a self-sustaining service, meaning both as an operational matter and as a capital matter. In other words, the return should be sufficient to then meet the obligations for capital replacement repair that are endemic to that kind of service, like transmissions and other things. In other words, it needs to be sufficient to not require separate town funds. Even those within the non-tax areas of town operations. In other words, like the Harbor Fund or whatever they're all called. Am I in the right target zone here?
I mean, that's where I was coming from, because I think that the excess revenues we have in the harbor, we're using for other purposes in town, so to use them for the launch, you're in effect taking them away.
Yeah, I'm expecting you all to say yes to this, but I
Yeah.
just want to be sure, because I'm working with the harbor master on this, and I want to be sure.
We keep saying he's got lots of revenue.
Exactly, but I
Yeah.
want to be sure I'm saying, no, that's not a funding source, it's going to be self-sustaining.
For the fees from the
Operating and
launch.
capital, meaning even the capital to buy the two launches. Question mark. Not just the repairs, replacements and so forth. But should that also be,
You might be able to amortize that,
okay, I understand.
right?
Yeah, so if you figure, okay, a launch is good for say 20 years or 25 years,
Right.
and the amount is, you know, 2 launches or whatever is $150,000, divide that by 20 years, and that revenue should be accumulated
Yeah.
each year.
That's the way I'm approaching it.
Right,
Exactly.
plus fuel,
Yeah,
salaries, insurance,
that's
all that.
operations, yeah.
And then all that bundles together, and then at the end of the day, there's some number of dollars that come back to the town net.
I was gonna say, like, self-sustaining to bare minimum, it would be great if.
Oh, okay, well, then I'm just adding a
Self-sustaining
component,
would be plus $1.
as opposed to just making a self-sustaining, you want it to have a return.
I'm just saying bare minimum has to be self-sustaining, like that, absolute bare minimum, but it would certainly be great if the, you know.
Okay, well, that's, I got it, but I just working on that scope, self-sustaining to return, but I think it's gonna be much closer to self-sustaining.
Right.
Well, and it might be you can increase clientele in time that would bring a net to the
Right.
town.
It's gonna have to increase clientele to be self-sustaining. mean, and then the question is going to be the one that got raised the last meeting, which is, do you have to have a commitment from that clientele before you can have a season? But that's a question for a second level. Let's do the first one first.
But you know, we're hiring people in that department to deal with a need that has been expressed, and those people come at benefits and pensions and all sorts of stuff, and
Yep.
to be justifying that drive launches is not kind of a plan, I think. Looking. They're doing other things. So assume they're not available. Is that accurate?
This will bump into some edges on things like the department, the supervision and how much of that should be picked up and this. But let me go from the simple, we can get more sophisticated as we do this.
Anybody have anything else that wasn't on the agenda?
Thank you.
Have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, yeah, I will be.
Peter moves, right, second.
We'll get it.
Lori seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. Can you just hit the bottom right hand corner of the hand button?
We don't want to see more than we see.
We need to see these.